One peaceful afternoon, a piercing scream shattered the quiet. It sliced through the air like a blade, sending birds fluttering from the trees. Curtains twitched as curious neighbors peeked out, and somewhere in the distance, tires screeched as a car slammed to a stop. The sound of hurried footsteps followed, heels clicking against the pavement like a staccato burst of gunfire. Bewildered, I turned my head, only to see my next-door neighbor, Linda, pointing a shaky finger at me. Her eyes were wide with theatrical terror. I glanced down. There was Buddy, my golden retriever, sprawled on the lawn, tongue lolling out, tail wagging like he hadn't a care in the world. The killer dog Linda was freaking out about was busy nosing a dandelion. Before I could open my mouth, sirens wailed in the distance, and my stomach sank. She'd actually called the cops. A patrol car screeched to a halt in front of my house, tires skidding on the asphalt. Two officers stepped out, hands hovering near their belts, faces tight with anticipation of a serious threat. That tension evaporated in about 3 seconds when they spotted Buddy, who promptly flopped onto his back, belly up, begging for attention. The taller officer, a guy with a buzz cut, turned to Linda. "Is this the dangerous animal you reported?" Linda gasped, clutching her chest like she was starring in a melodrama. "Yes. Look at him. He bared his teeth at me. That monster was about to attack. He should be put down before he hurts someone." The second officer, a woman in her 40s, squinted at Buddy. "Ma'am, that's a golden retriever. A menace." Linda shrieked, jabbing her finger at Buddy, who was now licking his paw, utterly oblivious to the commotion. The first officer barely stifled a laugh. The woman sighed, knelt beside Buddy, and scratched his ears as he wiggled closer, tail thumping the grass. "This dog's about as aggressive as a teddy bear," she muttered. Linda's face turned a furious shade of red. "Are you serious? Do your job. That thing's a threat." "Ma'am," the male officer said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You called 911 over a friendly golden retriever sitting in his own yard." Linda crossed her arms, tapping her foot. "And what are you going to do about it?" "Nothing," he replied flatly. Her jaw dropped, eyes bulging comically. "Nothing? You're just going to let this beast roam free?" The officers exchanged a look, their patience visibly thinning. "Unless this dog actually commits a crime, yeah," the woman said. Linda huffed dramatically, flipped her over-dyed hair over her shoulder, and stormed off, her sandals clacking angrily against the pavement. "Fine. But when he mauls someone, don't come crying to me." Once she was gone, the male officer snorted. "Wow, she's a piece of work. Tell me about it," I muttered, shaking my head. "She calls us at least once a week," the female officer added. "Last time, it was because someone's mailbox was too bright and distracting drivers." I chuckled, running a hand through my hair. "That sounds about right." They gave Buddy a few more pats before heading back to their cruiser. As they drove off, I rubbed my temples. Linda had been my neighbor for nearly a year, and in that time, she'd called the police for the most absurd reasons imaginable. Once, she reported a kid for loitering when he was just waiting for an Uber. Another time, she tried to shut down a kid's lemonade stand because they didn't have a business license. I should have known Buddy would eventually become her next target. That evening, as I sat on my porch with a cold drink, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my neighbor Jake. "Dude, Linda's on Facebook ranting about your dangerous dog. She's trying to get the HOA involved." I sighed. Of course she was. The next morning, I found a neatly folded letter slipped under my door, stamped with the HOA logo and labeled "Urgent Notice" in bold. I groaned before even opening it. Sure enough, it was a formal complaint. "Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that a potentially aggressive animal resides on your property. For the safety of the community, we request your attendance at a hearing with the HOA board to discuss this matter. Failure to comply may result in fines or further action." I stared at the paper, barely holding back a laugh. Buddy, the world's friendliest, laziest dog, was now an aggressive animal. This had to be a joke. Crumpling the letter, I realized Linda wasn't just trying to annoy me. She was going to get Buddy taken away. She'd just declared war, and I wasn't about to back down. At my kitchen table, the crumpled HOA letter sat beside my coffee mug, mocking me in the morning light. The sun streamed through the window, but it couldn't dispel the irritation simmering inside me. Linda had already wasted police time with her stunt, and now she was dragging the HOA into it. Buddy sat at my feet, tail thumping the tiles, clueless about the battle being fought over him. Somewhere in her suburban fortress, Linda was probably typing up another exaggerated Facebook post about the vicious beast terrorizing the neighborhood. I grabbed my phone and checked the HOA's website for pet rules. Nothing banned dogs. Nothing mentioned breed restrictions. The rules only vaguely stated that owners were responsible for their pets, meaning Linda's whole crusade was based on nothing but her personal grudge. Then a notification popped up from Jake. Linda's knocking on doors, trying to get signatures for a petition to ban dangerous breeds. Thought you'd want to know. I pressed my fingers to my temples. Of course she was. She couldn't win with complaints alone, so she was rallying support, spinning her story to anyone who'd listen. I could picture her clutching a folder of snarling dog pics she'd probably Googled, lips pursed in fake concern. I had to get ahead of this. Later that day, I took Buddy for a walk, deliberately passing by neighbors I knew weren't fans of Linda's antics. I casually mentioned the ridiculous HOA letter and her over-the-top reaction. Most rolled their eyes, already numb to her drama. Some laughed outright when I told them about the cops chuckling at her 911 call. She called the police over Buddy? Mrs. Carter, a 70-something widow who'd lived here for decades, shook her head. That woman's unhinged. She tried to get my son fined for playing basketball in our driveway. Another neighbor scoffed. I wouldn't sign anything Linda hands me, even if it was a birthday card. Jake chimed in with a grin. The consensus was clear, no one took her seriously. But that didn't mean she couldn't stir up trouble. 2 days later, the HOA held a meeting, and Linda was front and center, standing by a folding table with a thick stack of papers. She wore a smug look, like she'd already won. I have here, she announced, tapping the stack, a petition signed by concerned residents who believe aggressive breeds shouldn't be allowed in our neighborhood, for our children's safety, for everyone's well-being. We can't ignore this any longer. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. You do realize Buddy's a golden retriever, right? Linda sniffed. It's not about the breed, it's about behavior. I've personally witnessed that dog showing signs of aggression. One of the board members, Tom, looked unimpressed. By aggression, do you mean sitting in his yard, wagging his tail? Her nostrils flared. He bared his teeth at me. He was panting. I corrected. It was 90 degrees that day. Dogs pant when they're hot. Linda glared but didn't reply. Jake cleared his throat. Out of curiosity, how many people actually signed that petition? At least 30, Linda declared, flipping through the pages. Really? Jake smirked. Because I talked to at least 10 people this week who said they wouldn't sign anything you gave them. Chuckles rippled through the room. Linda's eye twitched. Well, maybe they changed their minds when they realized how serious this is. I leaned forward. So serious that the cops you called laughed at you? The chuckles turned to full laughter, even from some board members. Linda's face went scarlet, her jaw clenching. The HOA president, Mr. Grayson, finally spoke. Look, Linda, unless you have real evidence this dog's a danger, we're not doing this. Her mouth flapped like a fish out of water. She'd expected a slam dunk, not resistance. But what if someone gets bitten? Shouldn't we take preventative measures? Mr. Grayson sighed. What if we ban things based on one person's paranoia? Where does it end? Banning red cars because they look too fast. More laughter. Linda, now beet red, grabbed her petitions and huffed. Fine. If the HOA won't do their job, I'll take this to a higher authority. With that, she stormed out, the door slamming behind her. I exhaled, tension easing. I'd won this round, but Linda didn't quit easily. Sure enough, less than a day later, a neighbor texted. She called animal control. I stared at the message, then at Buddy, sprawled on his back in the living room, snoring. Of course she did. This wasn't over. The next morning, a firm knock interrupted my coffee. I knew who it was before I opened the door. The knock had that official edge. 2 animal control officers stood on my porch, one with a clipboard, the other scanning the yard. Linda hovered at the sidewalk's edge, arms crossed, smirking triumphantly. Morning, the taller officer said, adjusting his sunglasses. We got a report about a dangerous animal here. Let me guess, I said, stepping aside. A golden retriever? The shorter officer, a no-nonsense woman, checked her clipboard. Yep. Aggressive dog report. We're here to check it out. I gestured to the yard. Have at it. Buddy was sprawled in the shade, chewing a stick. When he saw the visitors, his tail wagged, and he trotted over, shoving his nose into their hands. The male officer crouched, patting Buddy's head. Wow, he muttered sarcastically. Real dangerous. Linda's voice screeched from behind. He's not acting aggressive now because he knows he's being watched. He's cunning like that. The female officer gave her a sidelong glance. Has your dog ever shown aggression, biting, lunging? Only at his reflection, I said dryly. He thinks it's another dog stealing his food. She smirked but hid it behind her clipboard. The male officer scratched Buddy's belly as he flopped over. This dog's no threat, he said flatly. Linda stomped forward. Are you blind? He's pretending. I saw him growling at me the other day. I crossed my arms. Linda, that was a yawn. He was baring his teeth because he was yawning? Her voice rose. What if he attacks a kid? What if he breaks his leash and runs wild? Do you have proof? The female officer asked, clearly done. Well, I know what I saw. That's not proof. She handed me a form. Routine documentation. We found no aggression. Case closed. Linda made an enraged noise, spun around, and stormed off. The officers nodded at me. Have a nice day, they said, driving off. I watched Linda retreat, already plotting her next move. A few days of quiet followed, too quiet. Then I got an HOA email. Another meeting, this time about pet safety. I knew what was coming. At the meeting, Linda stood up front, smug, with a stack of papers. I've compiled multiple witness reports of dangerous dog behavior, she declared. I raised an eyebrow. And by multiple, you mean yourself? She shot me a glare. Several residents have seen this dog roaming dangerously close to their homes. Some heard growling at night. Others saw it acting aggressively toward pets. Interesting, I said, since Buddy sleeps inside every night. She blinked, then recovered. Well, maybe he has a double. Maybe you let him out when no one's watching. Mister. Grayson pinched his nose. Linda, do you have proof? I don't need proof when the community's safety is at stake. You do. Actually, a board member said. We can't act on hearsay. Her face twisted. If you won't take this seriously, I'll go over your heads. To the city, the mayor, the governor. Someone will listen. Animal control already cleared him, I reminded her. She slammed her papers down. Then I'll escalate it. She stormed out, leaving silence, then laughter. She's going to do something crazier, someone chuckled. I nodded. She wasn't done. The next morning, a scruffy guy knocked erratically on my door, clutching his arm dramatically. Your dog bit me, he claimed, showing an unmarked arm. I leaned against the frame. Buddy bit you? Yeah. Charged at me, teeth bared. I barely escaped. I glanced at Buddy, sunbathing in the yard. Interesting, since he hasn't moved all morning. He stammered. Maybe it was yesterday. I was scared to report it. I pulled out my phone. Let's check my security footage. No need, he blurted, bolting down the street. An hour later, Jake texted, Linda's on Facebook, raging about the failing justice system over your dog. I rolled my eyes. She'd sent that guy. That afternoon, a sleek SUV pulled up to Linda's house. A suited man with a binder approached her door. I eavesdropped while fixing my fence. Mrs. Evans, he said, we need to discuss your complaints. Good, Linda beamed. When's the dog removal starting? He sighed. We're dismissing all your complaints. What? Neighbors say the dog's not aggressive, security footage disproves your claims, and you hired someone to fake a bite. Her jaw dropped. You're fined for harassment and false reports, he continued. Further action may follow if this persists. Linda gaped, then glared at me. This is your fault. I shrugged. No, Linda, it's yours. The official nodded. He's right. Reconsider your approach. This community values cooperation, not drama. She slammed the door in his face. A week of silence followed, suspiciously quiet. Then one evening, Linda knocked on my door, stiff and grimacing. I need to speak with you, she gritted out. Oh, the HOA's forcing me to apologize, or they'll fine me more. I smirked. Go on. She inhaled sharply. I apologize for making false claims about your dog and wasting everyone's time. That's it. That's all I have to say. She turned and marched off, muttering. I chuckled. That was the most painful apology ever. The neighborhood celebrated her defeat with a barbecue that weekend. Buddy was the star, dubbed HOA hero by the kids. Linda watched from her curtains, fuming but powerless. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. The neighborhood buzzed with relief. Someone posted a photoshopped pic of Buddy in sunglasses, captioned, "Neighborhood Protector." Jake texted, "Buddy's a legend." I glanced at Buddy, snoring on the couch. "Yeah," I laughed, "he really is."